Hello everyone, my name is Phawx. This is Ugreen's new lineup of NASs that they are deploying. So it's going on sale today. It'll be on Kickstarter. In the description field below, there will be a 40% off coupon that you can utilize. It should be noted that this is not a sponsored video. Ugreen did not send me any money to review this. They only sent me the unit. So I know that there are some people that think that if I got this unit, that's already payment enough, but there was no money that exchanged hands for me to say anything nice about this particular unit. I am very optimistic about it. However, there are going to be some negative things that I do say in this particular review. The good news is that mostly it revolves around software and that can be fixed. The hardware, I'm mostly impressed by it, and we're going to talk about a lot of that, and we're going to show my experiences. Before we get into that, there are some neat features that they've done, and one of the things that they've done is with regard to this disk tray and how easy it is to attach a new disk. Now, normally a lot of these types of trays will use screws to affix the hard disk to the tray itself. But the mechanism that Ugreen has developed is a little clip that just unclips, and then there are rubber grommets with like a little pointer that can go into the screw hole, and that holds it in place. And it holds it in place reasonably well. Like even just shaking around, it doesn't come loose or come out. So that rubber grommet will also reduce vibration and reduce noise, and it also serves to quickly and easily attach to the tray itself to be reinserted. Also, this particular unit, I actually like what they've done here. So on the back, there is this removable magnetic filter. Whoa. So you can quickly and easily just kind of clean off any dust that comes on here. So we can see that we have this very large fan that's here. And this fan pulls in air this way and it ejects air this way. And it is very, very good. Even when I set the fan to quiet mode, I could still feel a significant amount of heat coming through this. So not only are we cooling the SoC, the APU that's on this is just a little atom that's on the 4-bay one. The 8-bay unit, which I would love to be able to review, has a bit of a beefier chip, but the amount of airflow that they're getting through this and cooling off these hard disks is very good. So making sure that these hard disks are cool, they're doing an excellent job. On the backhand side, there's also some interesting stuff. If we look here, you can see that there's actually HDMI on this device. Now, if we connect HDMI to it, we can actually see this device booting up as if it's just a computer. Now, I was not able to access the BIOS, and that's not something that Ugreen really wants to be talking about, but I really wish that Ugreen would actually think about allowing people to install whatever operating system they want onto this. You can't really connect a keyboard or mouse to it, so nothing is really serviceable at this end. However, I am hopeful that potentially we can jailbreak this device and install whatever operating system we want at the time. But I've digressed. This is something that Ugreen really doesn't want me talking about. They want to talk about their particular OS that runs on here, which is a very Synology-like type of operating system. Now, the other part that we should talk about on the back is that there are two 2.5 gigabit network slots. And we're going to show off the speeds on there. We're also going to show what happens when I remove one of the disks while we have a copy moving, what happens when I replace the disk, how it fails, how it recovers from a failure, a bunch of different things that we're going to be talking about in this particular review. Ugreen sells a few different configurations of this particular NAS. There's a 2-bay, a 4-bay, a 6-bay, and 8-bay. They all have different configurations insofar as what type of chip is on there. The bigger the bays, the bigger the chip that comes on there. So that's going to be up to you to decide on what you want, and also think about what type of RAID configuration you're going to want to hit when you think about these types of arrays. On the 4-bay unit, I went with a RAID 5 configuration. That gives me 4 disks, but one will be parity. So effectively, I only have 3 disks worth of space. I have 4 4-terabyte disks in here. So the ultimate space that is available to me is 10.8 terabytes of space. So be mindful of the type of RAID configuration that you're going to choose. You can also do RAID 10, but that'll eat into more of your space because you only get half of your available space that you're there, but you'll get better I/O if you were really conscious about how much speed you had, especially if you wanted to max out the speed that was going through that 2.5 gigabit network. Doing RAID 5 on it, I saw that I did have some dips when it came to writing. When it came from reading from that, I pretty much saturated my 2.5 gigabit network. So from that particular perspective, it's not really all that bad. I am very, again, optimistic about the Ugreen NAS. Right now, as it's launched, the application side of things is a bit bare bones, and we'll get into that in just a moment. But before we get into all of that, I wanted to show off the type of NAS that I have right now, and it's a very old server. This is like gray market gear that I got. It's a Giganto server with 12 bays, and I bought it for $125, and it works for what I need it to do. All right, so this is going to be a bit dingy, but this is basically my NAS right now, and I have it kind of vertically aligned to my wall with some 2x4s. Just because I used to have an actual rack, but it just took up a bunch of room, and I have everything now mounted onto one wall. And just saved a bunch of space, and I don't really need much else. But if we go ahead and take a look at how much power my Giganto NAS is taking. So this is what my current NAS is taking doing nothing. Just sitting there, just being powered on. So it's 244 watts that I am currently using. However, it's gigantic, it's large, and it consumes around 240 watts just sitting there doing nothing. When I actually start using the device, when I have to transcode video, when I have to do anything, power starts boosting up, chewing through nearly 400 watts when my NAS is busy transcoding video or doing other types of tasks that I have my NAS doing, is a bit too much. When I'm consuming nearly half a kilowatt for my NAS, and even though it has 12 bays, all of those 12 disks are 5.4K RPM, so they're very low power disks. I put in low power Xenon chips in there. I used low power DDR3. And even with all of those low power considerations, I'm still using nearly half a kilowatt when I'm busy doing a bunch on that NAS. It's been very serviceable, and I've had it since 2019. So I've had it for almost 5 years now, and it's been running strong. All of my disks have had only one failure. So it's been a fantastic NAS, but I'm chewing through too much power, and I really need to reduce how much power I'm taking, which is why I'm so excited that there are a lot of different companies coming out with very low power NASs. And Ugreen especially, because they are a brand that a lot of people trust and have used. So let's get into actually using the device. We're going to start with the setup phase of it and see what that's like. Then we're going to take a look at the storage manager. We're going to take a look at using disks and removing a disk, seeing how much power consumption we have from the NAS itself, and then wrap it up with the app experience that is available on this particular NAS. And then we'll wrap up our thoughts. In this part of the video, we're going to be taking a look at the user experience side of using the Ugreen NAS and what you should anticipate when actually using the NAS appliance. For all intents and purposes, when using it, it presents itself very similar to how Synology presents itself. So you have this notification center, you have a task center, you also have a little bit of heuristics so that you can see what your CPU and RAM is doing, and then you can also go into your user count. Right now, my default user count that I made is green and min. It should be noted that the username that you create is case sensitive, so make sure you make note of that. If we take a look at our control panel, this is up to date as of yesterday. So I am actually getting the latest bit here because I wanted to make sure that I got the very latest software that was available to me just prior to this video going up. So this is March 25th that I'm recording this particular segment, and the latest version that we have available is version 1.0.0.0483. Before we jump into any specific application, I wanted to go ahead and take a look at the control panel so you can see the types of features and functionality you're going to get on the Ugreen NAS by default when this becomes available. So right now with the current version that we have in user management, you can see that I have this green admin, which is a default testing username that I created. Again, it is case sensitive, so be sure if you, especially for logging in, you're going to need to make sure that the username that you're putting in is case sensitive. So if you're using capital letters for the username, that matters when logging in. Or you can go ahead and invite third-party external people to your NAS, which is a pretty cool feature. Now, this is going to be a little bit of a more advanced feature set because you're going to have to leverage some of the features that are already in the Ugreen NAS, which we're going to touch on later, but you'll be able to do things like dynamic DNS so that you can give someone a URL that will be able to go to your IP and dynamically update based on your typically home IP addresses will be changing their external interface all the time, but you're also going to have to punch through and make sure that it'll go through your firewall and router so that it can be connectable for anyone external. In file services, this is the main file sharing protocols that you're going to be using. As you can see, I already have Samba set up. So in here, you say enable Samba service. And you can also do other things like go ahead and make sure you can do SMB1 or turn off SMB1 because SMB1 has some security implications into there. But if you have a mostly up-to-date Windows network in your system, you can just pretty much just go to SMB3 and get all the benefits of using SMB3 directly. And then if you want to go for Mac OS, there are some Samba extensions that you want to have enabled so that it makes it better for Mac OS to be using your Samba share. Likewise, you can use FTP, which is a little bit simple. You can do NFS as well. So this is network file share. This is going to be something that if you're having more of a Linux type of network on your home network. And then rsync will be doing some simple backups and stuff. And there's WebDave as well if you wanted to connect to your new Ugreen NAS via this protocol. And then there's other advanced settings, so you can even enable the Bonjour service and the WSDD2 service so that the network neighborhood and also Apple Mac OS can clearly and easily see your Ugreen NAS. And then you can also enable UPnP discovery service. This will make it so that it's easier to find on your LAN as well. Next, if we go to device connections, you can see here I have DXP 4800 plus 3562.local. The .local is the search domain, right? So that's the domain name that you're going to have. Typically, .local is your sudo domain, sudo top-level domain. So that is not anything that is recognized by ICANN. So .local is typically used for local networks that don't have anything external to it. So that's how you give a name to the device on a local network only. And then remote access, this is again to talk about how you'd use the user management for remote peoples. You would go ahead and enable DDoS support. So this is dynamic DNS support. This will be able to basically give you that the instance of using your external IP and updating it every time automatically. So you can just give people something like ugreen.phawx.com or phawx.ugreen.com, and that'll always go to my NAS externally. So that's the type of things that are already built into this. You're going to want to set this to automatically redirect HTTP connections from the desktop to HTTPS. That is very important that you do that. And then you're going to get this particular screen. Don't worry about it. Just go ahead and click advanced and then get back into it. I'll go ahead and log back into my account. All right, so now I am using HTTPS, but there is no certificate here. This is something that Ugreen is also going to be fixing, either with Let's Certify or their own CA, Certificate Authority, and they'll be able to give you an actual certificate that will no longer give you this warning message. Nothing really to worry about here. It's just a self-signed cert, so we can just go on to the next part. Here we have the ability for the Ugreen NAS to connect to a domain. Since I don't really have anything like that set up on my network, especially for this tested interface, I don't have this particularly set up. But if you do use domains on your local network, this is where you're going to be connecting to it. This is to enable Telnet or SSH. This is really cool to see and something that I think more to the point is going to be for more advanced users and something that I hope to see Ugreen adopt more for their third-party users. And there's more that we have to talk about that later. In hardware and power, you can see the different types of settings that you can do. If you want the sound on the NAS to be quiet, this is where you're going to be turning down the buzzer sounds. For fan, you can have it default or quiet or full speed. At full speed, it is pretty loud. For what it's worth, I prefer having the fan set to quiet. Also, it does push a good amount of air from the back all the way to the front. So we're cooling off this device from the SoC, also the hard drives itself. I really like the configuration that they have this in this single large fan that blows air from the back all the way through the front. Pretty nice. You can also change the LED indicator light settings just in case you don't want it to be distracting for you. If you have your NAS, it's going to be on your desk and you want to keep it pretty transparent insofar as you can't hear it and you can't see it. In network settings, this is pretty self-explanatory. This should be pretty obvious, so you're going to have to set this up yourself. Obviously, it will default to DHCP, so it'll just fetch whatever it can. And then over here, you can see that on my network status that I have, that I am using 2.5 gigabits as my connection. So I have a 2.5 gigabit network now. In security, these are some just pretty good hardening rules that you can apply, enabling a firewall, and then the certificate. These are the certificates that I was talking about before. This is an indexing service that runs on your NAS, and this will go through all the files that you have, and it'll periodically go through them. You'll actually be able to hear it spinning on those hard drives that you have. And then in system service, we have about, and you can get a good indication of what is on your particular unit. I have the DXP 4800 Plus here, and you can see that I have the Intel Pentium Gold 8505, which is a very low power chip, but it is still very performant. And I have 8 gigabytes of RAM, expandable up to 64 gigabytes of space. Here you can see the storage. I have 4 terabytes connected. I'm doing RAID 5, you can see right here. And that is the file system that I'm using is BTRFS. And that is pretty much what I have. And these are the internal services that are running and device analysis. Then update and restore. And this is pretty much everything that you have from the control panel. Next up in this video, let's take a look at the storage manager part of this, because this is where you're going to be doing to set up your storage. Now, obviously, Ugreen has different NASs, so they sell a 2-bay, a 4-bay, a 6-bay, and an 8-bay. All those have different configurations, and they'll need more disks if you want to set those up. And you can set up everything in the storage management configuration part of this in Storage Manager. So you can see in Storage Pool, I've created a RAID 5 array with 4 disks. So I have one parity disk, so if one disk fails, all my data is still intact, but I do need to replace that disk relatively fast. You can also do RAID 10 in this configuration, so you can have better I/O, but you're going to be sacrificing more disk space. So it's really up to you what you really want to do. Obviously, if you have 6-bay or 8-bay, you can do different stuff like RAID 6, or you can do RAID 10 with 8-bay and then have a bunch of I/O and only have 4 disks. So it's really up to you on how you want to tackle this. And then you set up a volume on top of that. I just labeled mine volume 1. You can see the BTRFS, and I'm using 6.9 terabytes already. But my actual usable disk space that I have, this is on 10.8 terabytes with 4 disks in RAID 5. In data organization, this is where you can sort the disk if you wanted to serialize anything. In advanced settings, you can opt to do performance on read or write. You can prioritize read or write and any particular way what you want in between, or you can prioritize RAID sync. For quick repair, you can turn that on or off. In hard disk management, this is basically to test everything on your disks and also test for bad sectors. And external storage stuff, this is where you'll be able to connect via USB external storage, as well as different types of latency configurations. And basically, this is like how Windows does the quick removal or not, or better performance. So if you turn this on, make sure that you properly eject the hard disk before you remove it, or power down everything before you remove it. And that's all you really need to be knowing about for Storage Manager. It's pretty self-explanatory and pretty simple. Let's get into showing how fast we can read and write to this NAS. So I already have my full NAS that's on the side, and I'll show you what that looks like later on in this video. But if I go ahead and copy a file, I'm going to copy a 6 gigabyte file. Let's see how fast it goes. So I'm writing from my already existing NAS that is connected via 10 gigabit, and it's going through my 2.5 gigabit network that is also connected to this 2.5 gigabit Ugreen NAS. And I am going at roughly 250 megabytes a second, almost kind of saturating what a 2.5 gigabit network should do. I should be able to go a little bit faster, but that's writing to this particular NAS. We'll see how fast I can read from it. So if I could take this data on the Ugreen NAS and send it over to my other NAS and see what type of performance I get. But let's go ahead and take a look in the task manager and see what we have here. So you can see our CPU utilization wasn't all that much. It was able to tackle that straight transfer rate. Memory is fine. Our network, you can see this line here is pretty clean. We are fully saturating 2.5 gigabit, and then we kind of dip down a bit. If we take a look at our hard disk, you can see where this is looking like. So obviously RAID 5 is going to take a small hit. If we were to do RAID 10, obviously these disks would perform much, much better. But overall, you can get a pretty good idea of what you should anticipate from that. Now let's try to read data from the Ugreen NAS and send it to somewhere else on my network. All right, so I'm going to take that same file and paste it on over and see what we get. 200, 300 megabytes a second, 263 megabytes a second, 275 megabytes a second. All right, we dip down a bit right there, 250 megabytes a second. Looks pretty much consistent between the two that we have. So if we take a look here, you can see what this looks like between reading and writing. Ultimately, it looks like writing to the RAID array, at least 4 disk wise, we are going to get some dips in there with a consistent large payload file. You saw before that we had a bit more dips with writing. And from here, when we were reading to this, we had only a small dip before it kind of flatlined out again, and we were able to saturate that 2.5 gigabit network. The 4-bay Ugreen NAS that is running on RAID 5 with the particular hard disk that I'm running, those 4 terabyte disks, are pretty fine for what we need to do, and considering how low power it is. All right, so I'm going to run that test again, and I'm going to show what it looks like and how much power we're using when I copy this file over. So we're taking a look at that, and if I take a look at how much power we're using, we're at 65 watts peak, 60 watts typical. So we're using about 60 watts when copying this file. Before I go into durability testing of the data itself, what I wanted to just quickly talk about with regards to power consumption is that we saw that we were looking at using around 65 watts when I have all 4 of these disks. These are 7.2K RPM disks that are running. So we're using around 65 watts when we are fully saturating all the components that are on here. Obviously, the CPU wasn't really getting drilled all that much, so anticipate going up to like 70 or 80 watts in total as a peak power measurement of what you should anticipate drawing from the particular NAS at any particular time. On average, when it's just sitting here idle, I'm using 37.5 watts. So that's what you should anticipate regarding how much power this device is using. And if you're looking at this through the lens of a highly performant NAS that is small while also taking very little power, this is something that you might want to consider, especially when we take a look at how much power my other NAS is taking. The last bit that I want to talk about in this particular section, since we're already talking about storage and stuff, is I'm going to go ahead and remove one of these disks while we're writing data. So let me go ahead and get that set up. All right, so let's start pulling data. We're going to be pushing data from the Ugreen NAS to my other NAS. And while that's going, so we have this going, I'll go ahead and just remove one of these disks. Nothing happened. So you can see right here, I've gone ahead and removed the disk and it's still going, or was going. Let's see if it recovers. Okay, hard disk 1 has been removed. Storage pool 1 is degraded. You can see that on the top right over there. And over here, we can see that it picked back up and everything is going through again. So nothing catastrophic happened, and it's exactly what we wanted to see. There was a brief pause while the disks failed over, so nothing too catastrophic that you could anticipate from that. But yeah, we are looking at is basically removing that disk and moving it over to another NAS while I ejected a disk from the system, and everything worked just fine. So let's go ahead and take a look at our notification center. It said the storage space 1 has degraded. Go to view details. My NAS is now beeping, so we can hear that. All right, so it's giving you an indicator through noise that one of the disks has failed. All right, so I'm going to go ahead and put in the same exact disk and see what happens here. Okay, it's no longer complaining to me. The system has automatically reconfigured the storage pool 1 for you. Go view it. Okay, storage pool 1 has a degradation has occurred. Okay. Where are we? How do things look? It looks like everything went back to normal, just putting back that same disk. Obviously, if I put in another disk, it would have to rebuild that parity data that needs to get rebuilt. So that's going to take a portion of time. And while that rebuilding phase is happening on a brand new disk, what you are going to have is a noticeable downtick in performance because all of those disks are recreating that parity data. So just be aware of that when you do stuff like that, is that whenever you replace a disk, is that it is going to impact performance until it rebuilds the disk. But afterwards, everything is going to be fine. And at this particular moment, we're seeing that it's normal. So thumbs up from that we get proper storage removal here. Ugreen also offers a service when you're first starting up the device that you can put in your phone number, and Ugreen will actually send you a text that one of your disk has failed, so you get a notification. I would like to have some additional notification, like an email as well, if a disk failed. That is not something that I see that I can have set up prior. It only seems like they have that SMS texting functionality. So that's one thing that I do wish that they did set up, but that's going to cover our bases for the Ugreen NAS side from the storage configuration in terms of performance, the types of power it takes, as well as how it handles a failure. And the last part that we're going to be taking a look at in this particular review is taking a look at the applications that are available to us via the Ugreen NAS itself. And for what it's worth, this is a very bare bones experience. Obviously, this is still brand new, and it's something that Ugreen is still developing. Now, one thing that I want to point out here is that Ugreen is doing a Docker app, and I'm hopeful that this will be available soon. I hope that I'll be able to review the Docker application later on. Honestly, I hope that I'll be able to also review their 8-bay model, because I want to have a NAS that is low power, but also able to consistently saturate my 2.5 gigabit network all throughout my house. So that is something that I am still very, very keen on being able to test, but I'll have to retest when Docker becomes available to us. But if we take a look at the applications that are available to us, like DLNA as a protocol for streaming media to appliances in your house is a bare bones protocol, and it is very, very lackluster in terms of how robust it is with metadata. And when you take a look at how Plex looks, Plex is a much better interface for managing data and streaming data, especially externally. So having Plex as an app, I think, would be a #1 priority for Ugreen to have on there. But they also said that they're going to have Docker available soon. So I feel like as apps start coming to Ugreen, I will have to re-review this later on. But what we have right here is very, very bare bones and just the base of what we should anticipate. If we were going to Video Center, this is what they have, and you kind of access it through the apps that they have. And I'm doing this through the web page right now. So they automatically scrape the movie data here. I'm going to see if I can try to switch my language to English, because it seems that because I'm getting a different language here that is not English, and it doesn't appear that I can change this to English in any way. So this is another thing. Again, it's still early days yet, but for instance, Avengers Endgame, this is a very, very large file. Let's go ahead and try to see how it streams this file. We can see down here, it has different options that we can choose. And it's interesting, does this transcode it automatically? This is something that you would think that it would do. So if I did 480p, will it go faster? Right now, this is just trying to send the 4K video to me, and it's taking quite a while to send to me. So let me go ahead and say 1080p. Does that go any faster? And at this point, we should be transcoding. So if I were to go ahead and look at my task manager, do we see any utilization from anything? No, it's almost like nothing's happening whatsoever. So this Video Center app is not fully baked at all, even though it provides a nice enough user interface and will scrape for content automatically. Overall, it's not really good enough. Now, if I were to go to the directory itself via Samba, okay, so here you can see this particular window box that I have open. This is pointing via the Samba connection via my Windows 11 box to my Ugreen NAS. And if I go ahead and double click on it, it instantly loads up. So you can see all of this. I can quickly scrub through this entire video, and it's a large 4K video. Again, this is a 30 gigabyte file, so it's very, very large, and I can easily scrub through it. So what if we go to the Video Center and open up something that's way smaller? So let's go ahead and go into Video Center, and I'll do like an old movie that I know. There we go. Babes in Toyland. So I'll go see, and it looks like that loaded up instantly. All right, so I'll go ahead and scrum through this. But again, this is scrubbing through this very small file is taking forever. I don't even know why you would use the Video Center app. If I can do 480p, what happens? Let me go ahead and take a look at the task manager. Look right there. So you can see when I choose the 480p, it is transcoding right now. So now my GPU is transcoding. But honestly, this is something that Plex should be doing automatically when it's tapping into the Ugreen NAS itself. So this is, again, something that I really, really hope that Ugreen figures out, because as it is right now, if you wanted to get this application for streaming video, it's not going to be good enough. So we do have to wait until either a Plex app or a Docker app becomes available so that we can hook into that and create our own Plex application within the Ugreen NAS and then deliver that particular type of video or any other type of application that we want for the Ugreen NAS. So this is where things get a little bit half-baked. And unfortunately, I can't test anything more for you because this is where we currently are with the Ugreen NAS insofar as the application side and what you're going to be able to do with it. So wrapping up my review on Ugreen's DXP 4800 Plus, overall, where I could recommend this, especially the 4-bay unit that they send me, and you have a 2.5 gigabit network at your house, this is going to be a very nice middle ground with regards to how much power it consumes, how much performance it gives you, and the cost of the device itself. Especially when we think about using the 4 bays itself. Thinking about using RAID 5 on the device, you're looking at having 3 disks worth of full space. So if you have 4 4-terabyte disks, you're going to have around 11 terabytes worth of space that you're going to be able to use with one parity disk. So if a disk fails, you'll still be able to recover from that failure. The other thing that's working on this device just fine, even outside of some of the things that I think are missing, like the Plex or even the Docker applications, is that you can just quickly and easily use this to use Time Machine and back up your Mac or back up your Windows PC. So having this as a backup of your data, that works today and works just fine right now. So if you were in the market for something that was strictly just for backing up your data, it's easy to recommend Ugreen's NAS on here. If you wanted something that was a lot more feature-filled compared to the other competitors from other NASs out there, it's not there just yet, and it's going to require me to take another look at this as the applications start getting a little bit more fully featured. So that's it for my review on the DXP 4800 Plus. A special shout out to my YouTube channel members as well as my Patreon members. Your guys' support really means the world to me. I really do appreciate it. I hope this video was informative. As always, guys, thank you for your time. And thanks for watching.